The torch was dying. Theseus stood alone in the darkness, listening. Nothing. Then, a sound. A slow breath somewhere beyond the stone walls. He froze. The labyrinth was silent again. Theseus raised his sword and took another step. His torchlight crawled across the walls, revealing deep scratches carved into the stone. Something had been here. Something was still here. Then came another sound. Closer this time. A heavy footstep. Theseus turned. Nothing. Only darkness. He could hear his own breathing now. His hand tightened around the sword. For years, Athens had sent its young men into this place, knowing they would never return. They had entered these corridors as sacrifices. Tonight, Theseus had entered as a hunter. But somewhere in the darkness, the Minotaur was waiting. Half man. Half beast. A creature born from a curse and hidden beneath the greatest palace of the ancient world. Theseus had come to kill it. But he had no idea where it was. And the deeper he walked into the labyrinth, the less certain he became that he was the one doing the hunting. Because this was not simply the story of a hero who faced a monster. It was the story of a young man searching for his identity. A prince searching for his destiny. And a hero who would discover that killing the monster was only the beginning. Because sometimes, the most dangerous labyrinth is the one inside yourself. Part 1, The Boy Who Wanted to Become a Hero. Theseus was not born a hero. He was born far from the city that would one day remember his name. Far from Athens. Far from the throne. And far from the destiny waiting for him. For years, Theseus lived with his mother, Aethra, in the quiet land of Treason. He knew little about his father. Only that the man was powerful. And that his true identity had been hidden from him. But beneath the surface of this ordinary life was a secret. Theseus was the son of Aegeus, king of Athens. And one day, he would have to prove it. Aegeus had left behind a sword and a pair of sandals. He placed them beneath a massive stone and told Aethra that when her son was strong enough to lift it, she should reveal the truth. Years passed. Theseus grew stronger. But he was still just a young man. Until one day, his mother finally led him to the stone. She told him what was waiting beneath it. Theseus looked down. The stone seemed impossibly heavy. He placed both hands against it. He pushed. Nothing. He tried again. His muscles strained. His feet dug into the earth. And slowly, the stone began to move. Theseus lifted it. Beneath it were the sword and sandals of his father. In that moment, everything changed. He was no longer simply the son of Aethra. He was the son of a king. But Theseus did not immediately sail safely across the sea to Athens. Instead, he chose a far more dangerous path. The road. It was a journey filled with bandits, killers, and monsters. And Theseus decided to face them one by one. Not because he had to. But because he wanted to prove that he was worthy of the name he had just discovered. Along the road, he confronted men who used fear to control travelers. One by one, Theseus defeated them. But every victory changed him. He was becoming stronger. More confident. And more willing to believe that destiny belonged to him. By the time Theseus finally reached the outskirts of Athens, he was no longer the unknown boy who had lifted a stone in treason. He had become a warrior. A man carrying the sword of a king. But there was one problem. The king did not recognize his own son. Aegeus looked at the stranger standing before him. And saw a potential threat. And Theseus was about to discover that reaching Athens would be far easier than surviving it. Part 2, The Road to Athens. Athens was supposed to be the beginning of Theseus' new life. Instead, it became the place where he nearly died. The young stranger had entered the city carrying a sword that belonged to its king. But Aegeus did not know him. And someone else did. Medea. She was already living in Athens, and unlike the king, she recognized Theseus for who he truly was. She understood the danger immediately. If Aegeus discovered that this young man was his son, Theseus could become the future heir to the throne. So Medea decided to act first. She convinced Aegeus that the stranger was dangerous. And slowly, she began to turn the king against his own son. But Theseus had one thing Medea could not hide. The sword. When Aegeus finally saw it, he understood. The weapon was the one he had left behind years earlier. The sandals. The sword. The impossible strength. This was his son. Theseus was alive. The king embraced him. And for a brief moment, it seemed as though the story had reached its happy ending. But Athens was still living under a terrible shadow. Across the sea, on the island of Crete, ruled King Minos. Years earlier, Athens had been defeated by Crete. And the price of that defeat was horrifying. At regular intervals, Athens was forced to send young men and women to Crete. They were taken to a place from which nobody was expected to return. The Labyrinth. Deep inside it lived the Minotaur. A creature with the body of a man. And the head of a bull. The Athenians had no army capable of stopping Minos. No weapon capable of reaching the monster. And no courage capable of changing their fate. Every sacrifice meant more families losing their children. Every ship that sailed toward Crete carried the same message. Athens had surrendered. Then Theseus stepped forward. He volunteered to go. Not because anyone ordered him to. And not simply because he wanted glory. He had seen the fear in the faces of the young people chosen for sacrifice. He knew that if nobody stood against the Minotaur, the same nightmare would continue forever. So Theseus made a decision that would change his life. He would go to Crete. He would enter the labyrinth. And he would kill the creature that had haunted Athens for years. Aegeus begged him not to go. But Theseus had already made his choice. The ship was prepared. The black sails were raised. And before Theseus left, his father gave him one final instruction. If Theseus returned alive, the ship was to fly white sails. If he died, the black sails would remain. It was a simple signal. But one day, it would decide the fate of a king. The ship finally left Athens. The coastline slowly disappeared behind them. And as Theseus watched the city fade into the distance, he could not know what waited across the sea. A kingdom ruled by Minos. A princess named Ariadne. A maze from which no one could escape. And a monster that had never known anything except darkness. The journey to Crete had begun. And Theseus was sailing directly toward the labyrinth. Part 3, The Minotaur and the Labyrinth. Crete appeared on the horizon like another world. After days at sea, Theseus and the other Athenians finally reached the island ruled by King Minos. But Crete was not a land of fear. It was a land of power. Massive palaces rose above the landscape. Ships filled the harbors. Merchants moved through crowded streets. Painted walls and enormous stone halls reflected the wealth of a kingdom that controlled the sea. And at the center of it all stood the palace of Knossos. But beneath this magnificent world, something terrible was hidden. Deep inside the earth was the labyrinth. A maze so complex that anyone who entered could become lost forever. And somewhere inside it lived the creature Athens feared more than anything. The Minotaur. According to the ancient story, the creature was born from a curse surrounding the royal family of Crete. It was neither fully man, nor fully beast. King Minos could not allow the creature to be seen. So he ordered the labyrinth to be built. A prison with countless corridors. Dead ends. Hidden chambers. And passages that seemed to lead nowhere. The Minotaur was locked inside. But there was something unsettling about the story. The Minotaur was called a monster. But what kind of monster is born into a prison, and never given the chance to become anything else? For years, the creature remained hidden beneath the palace. And the labyrinth became its entire world. Until Theseus arrived. Among the people brought from Athens was Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos. She saw Theseus. And something about him caught her attention. Perhaps it was his courage. Perhaps it was the fact that he seemed completely different from the terrified prisoners around him. Or perhaps she simply understood what was about to happen. Theseus would enter the labyrinth. And almost certainly never return. Ariadne decided to help him. But there was a problem. Even if Theseus killed the Minotaur, he could still die inside the maze. Because the labyrinth was designed for one purpose: to make escape impossible. So Ariadne gave Theseus something more important than a weapon. A simple thread. She would hold one end. Theseus would carry the other into the darkness. As he walked deeper into the labyrinth, he would unwind it behind him. And if he survived, the thread would show him the way back. It was a simple idea. But it could mean the difference between life and death. The night finally came. The prisoners were brought before the entrance. The enormous stone doors stood open. Beyond them was darkness. One by one, the Athenians stepped forward. And then Theseus entered. The doors slowly closed behind him. The sound of the stone echoed through the corridors. He raised his torch. The flame flickered against the walls. His footsteps disappeared into the darkness. Behind him, the thread stretched back toward the entrance. Ahead, there was only the unknown. Theseus took another step. Then another. And somewhere deep inside the labyrinth, something moved. Theseus stopped. He listened. A low sound echoed through the stone. Not human. Not animal. Something else. The Minotaur knew he was there. And now, the hunt had begun. Part 4, The Night Inside the Labyrinth. The deeper Theseus went, the darker the labyrinth became. His torch was the only light. The flame flickered against the ancient stone walls as he moved slowly through the corridors. Behind him, the thread stretched through the darkness. A thin line connecting him to the world outside. To Ariadne. To Athens. To everything he had left behind. But ahead of him, there was nothing. Only silence. Theseus stopped. He listened. A drop of water fell somewhere in the darkness. Then another. He took a step. His footsteps echoed through the corridors. And then, another sound answered. A deep breath. Theseus turned. His sword was already in his hand. Nothing. Only an empty corridor. He continued. The passages twisted and divided. Left. Right. Another corridor. Another dead end. The walls seemed almost alive. Every turn looked the same. Every shadow seemed to move. And somewhere beyond those walls, the Minotaur was waiting. Theseus could hear it now. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Getting closer. He raised his torch. Nothing. Then the footsteps stopped. Silence. Theseus realized something terrifying. The creature was not simply wandering through the labyrinth. It was hunting him. He moved forward. The torchlight revealed enormous scratches carved into the stone. Fresh ones. Theseus tightened his grip on the sword. Then he heard a roar. The sound exploded through the corridors. Dust fell from the ceiling. Birds scattered somewhere in the darkness. And suddenly, the Minotaur appeared. It was enormous. Its body was that of a powerful man, covered in muscle and scars. But above its shoulders was the head of a massive bull. Its eyes locked onto Theseus. For a moment, neither moved. The hero and the monster stood facing each other. Then the Minotaur charged. Theseus barely escaped. The creature smashed into the stone wall, sending fragments of rock across the floor. Theseus struck. The sword cut deep. But the Minotaur barely stopped. It turned and attacked again. Theseus ran. Not because he was afraid to fight, but because he understood that strength alone would not save him. The creature was larger, stronger. And inside this maze, it knew every corner. Theseus had to use something else. His mind. He moved through the narrow corridors, forcing the Minotaur to follow. The creature roared behind him. Its footsteps shook the stone. Theseus waited for the right moment. Then he turned. The Minotaur charged. Theseus moved aside at the last second. The creature crashed into the wall. This time, Theseus did not hesitate. He drove his sword forward. The Minotaur staggered. The roar became a low, painful sound. Then the creature fell. Silence returned to the labyrinth. Theseus stood over the body, breathing heavily. The monster was dead. For the first time in years, Athens was free from its terror. But Theseus was still trapped. He looked around. The corridors stretched endlessly in every direction. Then he remembered. The thread. He followed it. Step by step. Through the darkness. Until finally, he saw light. The entrance appeared ahead. Theseus walked out of the labyrinth alive. Ariadne was waiting. The Athenians escaped Crete. But the story of Theseus was about to take another turn. Because after surviving the labyrinth, Theseus would leave Ariadne behind. And whatever the reason, that decision would become one of the first signs that the young hero was beginning to change. He had entered the labyrinth searching for a monster. He had killed it. But he was carrying something out with him that no sword could destroy. The consequences of his choices. Part 5, The Hero Who Could Not Escape His Fate. The Minotaur was dead. The labyrinth was behind him. And Theseus was finally sailing home. For the first time in years, Athens had hope. The young man who had left as a stranger was returning as a hero. But Theseus had not left everything behind in Crete. Ariadne had helped him survive. Without her thread, he might have killed the Minotaur. And still died inside the maze. Yet somewhere along the journey home, Theseus left her behind on the island of Naxos. Ancient versions of the story give different explanations for what happened. Some say Theseus abandoned her. Others say the gods had another plan for her. Whatever the truth of the myth, Ariadne disappeared from Theseus' journey. And Theseus continued toward Athens. But there was one thing he had forgotten. The sails. Before he left, his father Aegeus had given him a simple instruction. If Theseus returned alive, the ship was supposed to fly white sails. If he had died, the black sails would remain. The message was simple. But Theseus forgot. The ship approached Athens. And high above the city, Aegeus stood watching the horizon. He searched the sea for the ship carrying his son. Then he saw it. The vessel was returning. But the sails were black. Aegeus froze. He believed Theseus was dead. His son had failed. The Minotaur had won. Overcome by grief, Aegeus threw himself into the sea. And the man who had waited years to see his son return would never see him again. Then Theseus arrived. Alive. Victorious. A hero. But his father was gone. In a single moment, victory became tragedy. Theseus had defeated the monster in the labyrinth. But he could not defeat one simple mistake. And that mistake would haunt his legend forever. He eventually became king of Athens. And in later Greek tradition, Theseus was remembered not only as the slayer of the Minotaur, but as a founder and unifier of Athens. His name became part of the identity of the city. His victories became legends. His journey became a story told for generations. But the more we look at Theseus, the less perfect he becomes. He was brave. But he was also reckless. He could be loyal. But he could also abandon those who trusted him. He wanted to become a hero. And he succeeded. But becoming a hero did not make him free from fear, mistakes, or consequences. That is what makes the story of Theseus so powerful. Because the labyrinth was never only a place beneath the palace of Crete. It was a test. A test of courage. A test of identity. And a test of what a person does after victory. Theseus entered the labyrinth searching for a monster. He found one. He killed it. And he escaped. But the greatest challenge was waiting outside. Because killing a monster is one thing. Living with the choices you make afterward is something else entirely. And perhaps that is why the story of Theseus survived for thousands of years. Not because he was perfect. But because he wasn't. He was a hero who could face a creature in the darkness. But could not always escape the darkness within himself. And sometimes, the most dangerous labyrinth is the one we carry with us.